That's all, folks. The Russian offensive to the west of Avdiivka now completely choked. Ukrainians were able to seize the total initiative in the Black Sea and, according to the head of defense intelligence of Ukraine, Kyrylo Budanov, a very important and quote-unquote serious raid in Crimea right now is being developed. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Who? Today we have this article to discuss, which is just, let me even read it to you word by word. Russia's spy service accuses US of trying to meddle in presidential elections. And I mean, yes, you heard it right, it's not the opposite way around. It's not Russians trying to interfere with American elections, it is Americans trying to interfere with Russian elections. Which is already ridiculous enough, because I think the entire world knows exactly who is going to quote-unquote win in Russian presidential elections, which by the way happening in the end of March. And right here, just for example, is one of such articles, which is saying that on Russian TV, ahead of the elections, there is only one program, which is Putin's. They do not show pretty much any other candidates, at least on federal channels. They only push the narrative of Putin. So, at least for me, the only logical question here is the following. Is it Americans who block all the videos from other candidates? But at the same time, why would even then Russians complain? Wouldn't they want Putin to win anyways? And speaking about winning, the only intrigue is how much percentage Putin will be able to get. So according to this another article, it is approximately going to be 82%, which to be honest I also kinda agree with. I do not think Putin will want to get like 95-97%. He simply does not want Russia to look like, at least internationally, to look like North Korea. He wants to kind of show the rest of the world that there is still some kind of competition within the Russian government. And by the way, if you've noticed another thing, all these articles we were just talking about I was able to find on Ground News, the website which I was personally using every single day for the last several months when I was preparing for my daily news updates. And all I had to do is to follow several topics of interest, such as for example Russia politics, Ukraine war, Putin, Russia, Ukraine, and it prepares all the relatable articles for me in the one single place. And what I personally love so much about this platform is that it allows me to compare different articles presented by different sides of the media, such as, for example, left, center, and right, and you can just see how the headlines change from different sides of the media. For example, the left ones say Russia's spy services accuses US of trying to meddle in presidential elections, and in the meantime, if you go to the right-sided media, it says that US is trying to disrupt Russian election. And this obviously allows you to see how different media presents the very same story for its readers and is able to do it by pulling articles from different sources, such as for example in our case the total news sources for this article is 23. If you scroll down, you can also see the bias distribution, which shows that 64% of articles are presented by the right-sided media, and the factuality for this particular article is pretty low. Only 27% of articles are of a high factuality, which to be honest is no surprise. We are talking about Americans interfering with Russian elections. This is a borderline conspiracy theories. And Ground News even includes the articles from the Russian state-affiliated media, such as for example right here, Russia Today, so that the readers can read both sides of the very same story, which to be honest in my opinion is extremely important, because right now a lot of Western media and social media, they try to hide the narrative of Russians, pretty much leaving us in the dark about their motives. And the very best part about all of it is that I collaborated with Ground News to get you guys an extremely good offer. All you need to do is to use my link down below, ground.news/RussianDude, and you can subscribe for as little as only $1 for the entire month, or you can get 30% off for an unlimited access. Guys, please go ahead and check this offer while this promotion still lasts. It is also one of the best ways to support the channel, and just once again the link is ground.news/RussianDude. You can find it down below. Thank you so much Ground News for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the program. Now let's quickly talk about the situation in the east, where the Russian offensive completely choked down, then the situation in the south, where Ukrainians were able to seize the advantage in the Black Sea, and finally this serious upcoming raid in Crimea. First of all, speaking about the east, Ukrainians using munition artillery, basically, they were able to destroy a drone base of Russians located in Liman, Persia, along Kupiansk front line, which is a pretty important factor because this is the place where Russians were attacking pretty significantly over the last several days. Then we have another video, most likely along the eastern front lines, where Ukrainians, only using a simple FPV drone, were able to destroy, believe it or not, another heavy flamethrower of Russians called Solntsepek. You already know the cost of drone versus heavy flamethrower. The range is extremely massive, which makes it a pretty good investment for the Ukrainian military. Then we have some news from Klishchiivka along Bakhmut front line, another hot area in the east. And Ukrainians reportedly were able to destroy 13 armored vehicles of Russians and 2 tanks only in one of these mostly unsuccessful assault attempt by Russians. The number of military vehicles they're losing is just absolutely incredible. Next thing we have from Stepove, which is already close to Avdiivka front line, where Ukrainians were able to destroy 9 abandoned armored vehicles of Russians, which they just, the vehicles broke down or whatever happened. Russian infantry decided to abandon them, start to run away back to their front lines, to their trenches, and Ukrainians were like, well, okay, let's just destroy them. We're not gonna give them back to Russians to use against us, which obviously makes sense. Speaking about Avdiivka, right here is the video from its front lines where Ukrainians are using effectively artillery, and they're destroying a lot of Russian armored vehicles as well. And then as a result of this, right here we have a compilation video of a destroyed Russian armored vehicles along Avdiivka front line, which includes a lot of these machines, as you can see, being destroyed by Ukrainians, and shows just the scale of this complete failure of Russians to the west of Avdiivka. As soon as they were able to capture this city, there is nothing much else they were able to do it after that. And guys, I just cannot stay silent anymore, because the YouTube censorship is getting even closer and closer to me, limiting pretty much every single thing I'm saying, at least in my most recent videos. As you can see, 2 of them, every single one of these 2 videos that I made in the past, were completely limited from monetization and from advertisements, because even though I was censoring the videos, they still got limited. Which basically allows me to think that right now YouTube assigned a special person to manually review quote-unquote my videos, and if I say something which they don't like, something like Putin invaded Ukraine, which is, it's a fact, but looks like that's not what YouTube thinks, because I have no idea what was the restrictions about. We censor everything and still got restrictions, but the fact is the fact. It did happen. YouTube pays now closer attention to my channel more than ever. And guys, unfortunately, I can understand how frustrating for you it might be to see those episodes of The Russian Dude which are censored. That's because if I don't censor them, YouTube might even completely shut down my channel for showing 18 plus content. Something that they're never gonna do to the massive conglomerates media like CNN, Guardian, CBS or whatever like this. They can show literally whatever they want, and YouTube algorithm pushes their videos way more than individual creators. Well, that's just YouTube. But long story short, if you do want to see uncensored episodes of The Russian Dude and also support the channel right now when it matters the most, please go ahead and also check my Patreon. The link is down below. There is a free trial, and if you want, just subscribe. It starts on as little as $4 for the entire month. Once again, this shows the support of the channel a lot. Guys, thank you so much. Right now I need it more than ever. But so yeah, a couple of last things from the east before we can talk about the south. And first of all, according to Ukrainians fighting along the Avdiivka front line, in the last 24 hours, at least 11 different assault attempts by Russians along Toninke, Pervomaysky and Nevelsky located right here. All these 11 assault attempts were repelled by Ukrainians. This is massive news, which basically means that Russians are not able to do anything, and it is confirmed by the West media, specifically according to the New York Times. After the seizure of Avdiivka by the Russian forces, they were not able to pretty much do anything. The intensity of their assault attempts, they reduced significantly, not the number of attempts, the significance, the intensity of attempts. So yes, as you can see, they still try to advance, they send infantry across open fields, there's a couple of armored vehicles driving around, tanks, all this kind of stuff. The number of attempts still still more or less the same. It is the intensity which changed, which as you can see yields absolutely no results in the last already several days. But at the same time, once again, Russians do not abandon their dreams to capture the rest of the east of Ukraine. They try to advance to the west Avdiivka more. It is just right now that they are not getting anything, and at the same time they continue to lose at least 1,000 soldiers on average per day, which is basically like, it looks like a stalemate across the front line, but the meat grinder still works against Russians. So as you can basically see, with the combination of massive losses and absolutely lack of progress, right now the Russian offensive in the east, specifically to the west of Avdiivka, completely choked down. And this is, to be honest, the worst case scenario for the Z army, losing so many people and not advancing at all. And one last thing from the east of Ukraine before we finally talk about the south is that in Vuhledar there was another assault attempt by Russians, but Ukrainians were able to repel this one as well pretty much easily. Okay, now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the south, but first, guys, I did promise to do Lex reveal whenever we reach 242,000. And we did so, thank you guys all so much. So, well, here goes nothing. Yes, I'm standing for the very first time in almost 2 weeks. These are my legs. And well, if you want me to continue doing these cringe reveals, and if you also want to continue receiving these Russian-Ukrainian daily news updates, you can also please subscribe to my channel and like this video. This does help a lot with the YouTube algorithm, which as you can see is already working against me so much. So if we all assemble together, if we all start subscribing and sharing these videos, this will hopefully at least temporarily switch algorithm in our guys' favor. So let's all do this together and click this subscribe button. Thank you so much. And so yes, speaking about the south. First of all, along Zaporozhye front line, Ukrainians were able to repel some more assault attempts by Russians, not allowing them to advance any single meter forward. Pretty much the same thing right now that's happening in the east of Ukraine. As we go closer to Robotyne front line, specifically next to Verbove, Ukrainians were able to repel 3 assaults next to the settlement, not letting Russians to advance either. And then ultimately, if we go to Kherson front line in this small settlement called Nova Zburivka, Ukrainian artillery was able to destroy 2 self-propelled artillery systems of Russians. But most importantly, in the south of Ukraine, in the last 2 years, pretty much since the beginning of this Russian invasion against Ukraine, Ukrainians were able to destroy 26 enemy ships and more than 1,000 crew members were falling asleep forever. Which is, to be honest, an extraordinary statistics taking into consideration that the Ukrainian Navy is pretty much non-existent in the Black Sea, at least at this point. Like, this is just outstanding how they're able to achieve these results against allegedly, the second army in the world, even though we know that the army is the second army in Ukraine. And despite the fact that Russians were even trying to kinda bring their ships back and forth away from Crimean Peninsula to their ports in Novorossiysk, for example, they tried to hide them, to camouflage them. None of this helped. And as a result of all this, according to the representative of Ukrainian Navy, Dmytro Pletenchuk, right now Ukrainians seized the advantage in the Black Sea. He basically says this because in the last 5 days, just in the last 5 days, there was not a single Russian vessel spotted in this area. And another thing is that Ukrainians started to improve their naval drones, such as, for example, Sea Baby and Magura V5, which pretty much makes Russian Black Sea fleet to be afraid even more. And they're no longer risking to be in the open waters. They're no longer as protected, because if you remember, there was a video when the Russian marine soldiers, they tried to intercept a Ukrainian naval drone approaching their ship, and they were not able to do it simply because this drone of Ukrainians is extremely maneuverable and it has a pretty high speed, making it a very difficult target to intercept. And right now, the main question of today's episode. What do you think this control over the Black Sea unlocks for Ukrainians? Which kind of opportunities? That's right, Crimean Peninsula, and to be more specific, Crimean Bridge. Because according to the head of defense intelligence of Ukraine, Kyrylo Budanov, right now Ukrainians are preparing quote-unquote a serious raid, which basically means he also quotes that all the previous battles, all the previous distractions of Russian Black Sea vessels, it was just a preparation for this massive, even more destructive raid against the peninsula. For obvious reasons, he did not reveal what's going to happen, when or where it is going to begin. I mean, it just makes sense, right? Like, I don't think any person would question, like, why would you did not give us any details? But long story short, the idea that this is happening, it is pretty much at this point is a fact. Ukrainians know that Crimea is a pain point of Putin, and if you do something against the peninsula, this is exactly how you force him to communicate, to deal with you, to speak back or anything like this. So it is an Ukrainian estimation that maybe if they endanger or even destroy the Crimean Bridge, this is when they might switch the potential future negotiations in Ukrainians' favor. And by the way, guys, if you did not see my previous video, because unfortunately once again it was limited by YouTube, it is a pretty interesting one because Putin's data got hacked. Please go ahead and watch it, it's gonna appear to my right side. I want to thank once again Ground News for sponsoring this video. Guys, please subscribe to my channel, help me in my battle against YouTube, and don't forget about the official Russian Dude merch. All the links you will be able to find down below. Thanks so much Patreons for your support, and see you tomorrow.